Todd's raising a little hell. Here's your look at the McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Demon Knights, the Demon. Jason Blood, once a mortal man who lived centuries ago, was bound to Edragan after the demon was summoned by none other than the wizard Merlin. Jason was rendered immortal and granted the ability to swap places with his demonic counterpart upon saying the magic words. Though Jason has tried many times to exert his will over Edragan while he is transformed, the demon is too powerful to be completely contained. Still, more often than not, Edragan, despite his nature, is interested in the greater good, even if his motives and methods remain suspect. Before we look at everything that comes with Edragan, how about the first thing we do is figure out how tall the figure stands. To do that, I'm going to bring in my ruler. The ruler seems to be working lately on these reviews, although I have noticed if I have my arm too close to the camera, it ends up muffling the audio just a little bit. So I'm going to get pretty close to Edragan, and according to what I'm looking at here, the figure's roughly going to be about 7 3/4 of an inch tall, or that works out to be a figure that's about 19.5 centimeters tall. Seeing as size comparisons are also helpful in these reviews, let's bring a couple right now. For starters, here's Edragan next to Dr. Fate. I know I would have looked at Dr. Fate and just written it off that he was a shorter figure, but in actual fact, when you look at the top of Dr. Fate's helmet, he's about the same height as Demon Edragan. And for a figure that's slightly bulkier, here he is next to the Armor Batman that we just recently had a look at. Armor Batman is notably taller, but proportionally he's got the same size of build as Edragan that we're going to have a look at here. Let's talk accessories now. The figure comes included with a sword. The figure comes included with the trading card. The figure comes included with the display stand, and we're going to work that order backwards. First of all, he comes included with a display stand. It is, yes, the same stand that we get with many of the other DC Multiverse figures that we've looked at, short of the fact that the figures sometimes come with flight stands. Generally, 9 times out of 10, you usually get this type of display stand. Not knocking it. I like the fact, again, we get these stands with these figures. You never know when you may use them for them. And sometimes in cases with Edragan here, he has some difficult time with his ankles, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But moving on then to the next thing, the figure comes included with a trading card. Once again, using figure photography, taking a photo of the figure itself. I do like the pose that they put it in. I might even steal that for myself from displaying it on the shelf. I really like the way they've got the sword in his hand. Now, they actually don't list it as Edragan. Instead, they just list it as the Demon with Demon Knights down below. It's not until you really flip the card around that you see his real name is listed as Edragan, as well as a paragraph read, the same one that I actually read at the beginning of this review. Now, you could pause it if you'd like to read it for yourself, if you'd like to narrate it to the rest of the people that's in the room. Or again, it's the same thing I read at the beginning of this video. Put that to the side, the figure comes included with a sword. Quite a neat looking sword too. It would almost look sharp to the touch. Ooh, but it's not. I shouldn't even joke about something like that. I do like the fact that they, first of all, well, it's, yeah, soft plastic. I do at least like the coloring that they went with. It's generally quite dark when it comes to the hilt and the guard. And as you can see, it progresses into a more shinier gunmetal gray. These little notches and scratches on the sides of the surface of the sword really do look good as well. It's a bit of a tongue twister. But yeah, it is using softer plastic. I guess they would have to. And one good thing too, not knocking softer plastic, it's less likely to break. You couldn't do this with a rigid plastic. Go ahead, try it. Okay, don't try it. The sword does fit into either one of his hands. Although I've noticed with Edragan, the plastic that they've used for his hands is very rigid. It's harder to get those fingers away from the palms. You sort of have to navigate the sword in there. Now, you could also go in there and soften up the plastic. You can either submerge it in hot water. You could take a hairdryer pass, a few passes with it. Why does that almost look like the smaller phasers from Star Trek The Next Generation? I guess you could take a phaser to this, but you would want to set it to stun. Anything hotter than that would melt the plastic. A few passes of phaser set to stun, you could soften up the plastic. But really all you need to do is just pry the thumb away. Once you get really the thumb away from the palm, just like that, you can kind of then get the hilt of the sword in there. One thing I also noticed as I'm going to do this while I'm talking away, there we go. I've noticed the hand here on the figure is really loose. This hand isn't so bad. I mean, it's loose, but this hand is the looser of the two. I guess what I could do too, Let's just pop the hand off. See the little peg right there. Take some clear nail polish. I mean, you can use floor polish too. I just like to use nail polish because you can get in there with a brush. And then just thicken that up a little bit. Let it dry. Please, please let it dry. And then put the hand back in place. That might help just to make the hands a little tighter. See, because as you can see, it's really loose. Especially when you've got the weight of the sword in his hand, which I know so awkwardly looks right now. Let's get that sword a little bit further down. There we go. It looks good, though, in the figure's hands. I'm almost even tempted, too, reaching off to the side and bringing in the sword that came included with the unmasked red hood. I do like the fact that there's flames on the end of it. I'm not so crazy about the fact it's not a flat-looking sword, but I can fix that. Set the phaser to stun and just take a few passes. Anything. I don't set it to kill. That's going to melt the plastic. I might even just use this, too. I really like the way it's got the flame on the end of it. But, I mean, this one certainly has things beat when it comes to the size. I like the shape of it again, too. Let's go ahead and take the sword out of his hand. Poor hand just can't hold it right now. I'm going to have to go in there and fix it. Let's get a closer look, though, at Etrigan. Start things off first with his head sculpt. Now, this is based on Demon Knights, but to be fair, really, I mean, that's just an iconic look to Etrigan. The only thing that's really different here is the costume that they went with. I mean, eventually down the road, I would like to see them release maybe a color variation of this guy in the more classic Etrigan colors. But I think the head sculpt is top-notch. It reads perfectly for me as Etrigan. I like really the more furrowed brow that they've given him. He doesn't have a scowl necessarily, but he looks generally just ticked off with everything. There isn't a lot of paint really happening here. If anything, they've only just painted the eyes, the shadowing around the eyes, the lips, as well as the horns. I'm guessing the head itself is probably just the molded yellow plastic, but it works. I'm happy with it. There's not really I would have changed to the head sculpt. Then again, when we get to the body, now the body is a departure from what we're used to seeing, at least what I'm used to seeing for Etrigan. The colors are more muted here with more silvers, kind of a pearlesque color happening here, as well as the darker gunmetal gray for the armor. There's a nice little breakup of red that's added in there. So if you do miss your red on Etrigan, at least you get a little bit of here on the crest that's on the front of his armor. That red also carries on down below here as well. Unfortunately, some of the little areas of the stars, you can see in between the points, some of the silver is still peeking its way through. I wonder if I could maybe find a matching color of red that I could go in there and just nail polish. It'd be funny if I had a whole tickle trunk of different nail polishes. Oh, that looks like candy apple red. I'm going to just paint that. I guess you could probably just touch that up just a little bit. It's not terrible, but yeah, there's just a little bit of silver that's peeking its way through. I like the sculpting of the armor, how it has the additional scroll sculpting that they put in there. It really does look nice. It adds a lot more of additional charm to the figure. It does make him a little bulkier, especially when we talk a little bit about his arms, for example. They've kept the figure only to just a single hinge on the elbow, which does limit a little bit of what we can really do with his arms. But we'll talk more about that in a second. He's got these nice sticking out spikes. A little on the pricklier side. You're not going to be drawing blood, luckily. But you can see he's got spikes around his hands. And further up, it seems the further that he goes up the forearm, the bigger the spikes seem to be. Again, it looks like they probably molded this in the plastic and didn't actually paint it. And it doesn't look like they really did paint much here, really. Like the armor, this part, is all just kept to the gunmetal gray. This part looks like it's also just been, maybe it has had a little bit of additional paint. You can see just on the side of the abdomen, they've actually just airbrushed some slightly darker colors. You actually see more of it here on the forearms. The forearms is a slightly different shade, granted, than what we get here with the bicep. But I do like the pearl color that they actually went with. It does look really good on the figure. And he has his cape. Again, we can just have a closer look at the cape. A nice high collar for Etrigan. I like, again, the sculpting of the cape. This is something I really have noticed lately there with McFarlane Toys' capes. Not only did the cape sculpt, the sculpt looks good with the way that they sort of fold the cape in, but also the texturing that they use for the cape as well. It's not just a smooth, regular material. It actually looks like it's got some real coarse texturing to it. You see right there. Now, the cape, if I flip this up here, is plugged onto the back of the figure's torso. They probably have done that, so the cape sits generally pretty flush to the figure's body, and it's not going to be sticking out. I don't really think you'd need to remove it anyways, and really when it comes to the figure's articulation, being the fact that the cape is attached further up, it means, you know, it's not going to get in the way of things when you're moving the figure's torso, which we'll talk more about in a second. But yeah, I'm liking the coloring. There's really some elaborate sculpting that they've done for the armor. As we get the lower shin guard area here, you can see like the knee pads are a different color than the darker color they use below. The only thing I would say is when it comes to this armor, it seems to give you a bit of a problem, a hang-up, when we get to the ankles. They rotate fine back and forth, but I noticed hinging them back and forth this way, it seems like they're open and free. Maybe it's just the way that there's so much weight further back on the figure that I have some difficult time getting the figure to pose properly. Like if I put him down on a shelf, I sort of have to lean him a bit to compensate for the weight. And I think maybe a lot of it has to do with the fact he's got so much weight here on the shoulders, a very large head, and he also has the collar piece of his cape. That maybe causes the figure to be a little bit more top heavy. And maybe that's one of the reasons why the figure's falling over so much for me. Moving on to the figure's posability, we'll start with his head. The head rotates all the way around. You can hinge it up, and I was surprised to see how much it could actually look down like this. And of course, you can also rock it back and forth. Now, one of the last things, just actually before we move on to the rest of the figure's posability, is these little snaps that are on the side in real world would have attached then the cape to his armor. Again, they're just sculpted into the rest of the cape. I wish they could have gone in there and painted that maybe a gold or maybe a matching silver to the side and the shoulders. Anyways, for the arms hinge out. I have noticed, though, on my figure, it's just a little loose in the arm area, but those can move out. You can move them forward and move them back. Now, the top of the shoulders, the armor here is actually attached right here rather than attached to the top of the forearm. So there's, again, enough space, allotted space that you can move the arms easily, even beyond the point, really, of a 90-degree. Again, back and forth. The figure does have a elbow swivel, not a bicep swivel because that's all sculpted together, but an elbow swivel. And he only sadly has a single hinge joint. So because there's so much real mass to work with here, you really can't even bend it at a 45-degree angle, just a little less than that. The hands rotate all the way around, and you can also hinge those back and forth. Upper torso is on a ball joint. Quite a generous ball joint, too. And while I'm doing this, you may also see, too, that the lower torso, like the lower abdomen area of his torso, also is on a ball joint. When it gets to his legs, I didn't mention this earlier, but the front skirting as well as the back skirting is a softer plastic. But you can do a splits with Etrigan. You can bring the legs forward. Yeah, you bring them back. Mild swivel, just basically where that's attached to the ball socket. The double hinge on the knee. No articulation really on the boots. If there is, it barely moves. But at least you can move the feet all the way around. And again, I don't know, like the way they've sculpted in the bottoms of the boots like this, or the guard area of the feet. Even though there is mileage, I mean, you can move this back and forth fine. You can also ankle pivot them. Maybe that's the problem. Like the ankle pivot, there just isn't enough space. I mean, it looks like when you're looking at it from the side that you'd be able to move it. You sort of have to twist the ankle to get that ankle pivot. And he doesn't really have it down here. Maybe that's the thing that's throwing the stance off on the figure. And yes, he does have foot articulation too. Short of the fact that the figure does have some mild difficulty standing. I think if you're having him standing straight like this, you shouldn't have too many issues. If you're going to be putting him in any pose where maybe it involves him holding his sword, I think it's going to cause some slight top heaviness. That you will definitely want to use the display stand that comes included with the figure. Certainly when it comes to displaying the figure, there is the option of the broadsword that he comes included with. But again, I'm almost leaning towards the idea of displaying him with the sword that comes included with the red hood. Because after all, it does have the flames on the end of it. Not really the kind of color scheme I'm used to seeing with the Demon Etrigan, but I gotta say, like, the suit of armor does complement the figure. The very elaborate looking gunmetal gray that they've done along with the pearlesque chainmail. The colors do work well with one another. You're just not getting very bright colors happening here. If you do miss, though, a little bit of red with your Etrigan, fear not, at least you get a little bit of it further up on his torso armor, as well as a little bit of it also in the belt. I would be very open to the idea of this guy getting released again as a gold label where you can give him the more classic comic colors. The cape looks good. I like the way that they've sculpted the cape, and there's nothing at all I would have changed the head sculpt. Perfect Demon Etrigan. Now, of course, I've got him displayed here with his broad blade. I'm not really sure whether I'm going to permanently display him with that sword. Again, I kind of like the idea of having a sword that has fire on the end of it. Who doesn't like a sword with fire on the end of it? That I might end up just plucking the one that came included with the unmasked red hood. What do you guys think of the Demon Knights, the Demon, if you've picked up the figure for yourself, or just based on this review? What do you guys think of the figure? And would you be open to the idea of this guy getting a color variant? I'm sure at some point they're going to want to get some mileage out of this mold, and McFarlane probably will release this guy at some point. Maybe as a gold label color scheme, different color scheme closer to the comics. I'd be definitely open to the idea of picking up a figure if it was based on his classic comic colors. You wouldn't even have to change the armor. Just change the color of the armor. Yes, yes, yes. If you guys are new to this channel, you're enjoying the content that you're seeing, you can do a couple of things for yourself. First of which, you can hit that subscribe button down below. You can as well turn on the bell notification and keep your peepers peeled, because we will be looking at more DC Multiverse reviews coming your way in the not so distant future. And as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.